Hello, Garland Nixon here. It's Tuesday morning. I'm here with Laith Marouf, and he's in Beirut, Lebanon. Let's get an update and a report on him. A lot of things to discuss. Let's talk. Hello, Garland and Laith here. You know what's interesting? The first when we got on, I looked and I'm like, man, not many people on today. And the first thing I saw in the chat was no YouTube notification whatsoever. And just so you all know, I've had this happen before, and I expect it to be a norm now, where basically I put it like this: my numbers dropped in half, and when I went into YouTube analytics, it said less viewers from YouTube notifications, less viewers from YouTube feed. I mean, they put it right in the analytics that YouTube was cutting it down. So, they wouldn't be censoring us if we weren't doing something right. So in a way, it's a badge of honor when they do this. It lets you know you're doing something right. And I would commend all of the viewers to go to the normal channels that you go to and to look for new stuff. That's what you have to do now. All of my favorite channels, I don't get notifications for anymore. You have to search, go to your normal channels and look, because what the game plan is. Laith Marouf has a great website. It's called freepalestine.tv, more so than
The
ever.
video, but you know why I would want to say this?
Go ahead.
Because I just found out, when I started this website, I was looking for these URLs, and the freepalestine.video.tv was $5,000 to buy it.
Wow.
And so I couldn't, of course, afford that. And I just got the freepalestine.video. Yesterday, I was like, okay, maybe the price changed. Let me go look. And it's taken the freepalestine.tv. And when I went to it, it is a Zionist website. Somebody from Toronto, from the Jewish Defense League, the Jewish supremacist terrorist organization on the FBI list, had bought this website just to misdirect people going to our website. And they have a QR code right there that if you download it, there's malicious software that destroys your equipment. So watch out. Do not go to freepalestine.tv. Make sure you go only to freepalestine.video and report that website as a malicious hacking website.
There we go. Thank you very much. So, and also go to freepalestine.video. When you go there, make sure you donate. And of course, you ask all of the people, when you post freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms, and along with that post, put a note to people. It's important that you donate and become a monthly donate, a monthly subscriber if you can. Even if it's $5-10 a month, whatever you can, because the monthly sustaining stuff is what really helps. So donate anything you can. freepalestine.video. Okay, let's start here. One of the things that I want to touch on, it's a moral issue. I'm not going to pop up the all of the articles, but I go over articles every morning. And let me give everybody an example. Here's 5 articles I found, or 4. 1, 2, 3, 5 articles. Listen to this. Biden calls for Lebanon ceasefire. So that's out there. Biden saying, I want a Lebanon ceasefire, right? But here's another article. Biden-Harris released statements strongly backing killing of Nasrallah. U.S. officials quietly backed Israel's military push against Hezbollah. Now, here's another article. AOC, Harris is working tirelessly for a ceasefire. So we got articles where the Biden administration, we're working for ceasefires. We got to have a ceasefire. But then we can find other articles that says they backed Israel's military push against Hezbollah, as they call it, attack on civilians, as always. And that they actually released statements. So what we have, I want to ask you about this. They understand that the American people are human beings, and that the numbers say overwhelming, the American people are opposed to genocide. And you have a government now that's forced to lie to its people and say that their policies are so immoral, so unethical, so brutal, inhumane, that they understand that they can't say to their own people, yeah, we're for this. They have to lie to their people and then at the same time say, well, we're for this, and kind of quietly release also articles to, wink, wink, remind the Zionists, hey guys, we're still with you. We support this, but we're fighting for a ceasefire. It's preposterous, but it's quite revealing, Laith.
Yes, it is quite revealing. And, I want to remind everybody that to assassinate Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the Israelis claimed that to have fired 85 1-ton to 5-ton missiles on the block in the southern suburb of Beirut. And, just looking at the math, it is clear that Israel doesn't have enough F-15s and or F-35s to carry all those missiles all at once and drop them all at once, given the fact that any plane that is carrying a 5-ton bomb cannot carry anything else on its wings. So we are talking actually about a direct involvement of American, British, French, Italian, German air forces in this assassination, beyond the AWACSs that were up in the air and the satellite and surveillance and all of that the United States and all of it, the empire that it rules, have given to the Zionists to conduct this assassination. The United States is guilty of this and is guilty of the war crime of evaporating probably around around 1,000 civilians in those 10 building blocks that were evaporated in this assassination. And right now, similarly, as the Israelis are threatening to invade Lebanon, they are clearly receiving direct American and Western military support in their actions.
Yeah, and there we have the article right there in Politico. U.S. officials quietly. Now, here's the question again. Words mean everything. What the hell does quietly mean? Quietly backed. I mean, what did they whisper when they said go kill all those civilians? It is a preposterous. They use words that kind of imply, well, they were, really didn't want, but senior White House officials figures, listen to this, privately told Israel that the U.S. would support its decision to ramp up military pressure. Again, quietly, privately. What the hell did we think they were going to go get on a Zoom call and open it for everybody in the world to see? Of course, they privately said, let's move forward with the genocide. Quietly, privately. Again, that shows something. It shows that they know that what they're doing is immoral. So they have to use words. I was in law enforcement and I used to do statement analysis. And one of the things you do in statement analysis is you look for those kind of words, right? Quietly, privately. They don't mean a damn thing. But the question is, why do you use those? And the bottom line is, it says presidential advisor Amos Hochstein and Brett McGurk, the White House coordinator for the Middle East, told top Israel officials. Well, first of all, Amos Hochstein has Israeli citizenship. So what is it? Israeli officials told Israeli officials. So you take a bunch of guys with Israeli citizenship, and I'm supposed to believe that they're a go-between Israel, that they're discussing what Israel's going to do. It's the whole thing. The U.S. empire is being revealed exactly for what it is, inside and out. Laith.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the elite in the West have decided to take advantage of the crazy lunatic rabid dog image that the Zionists have right now across the globe, and to let them do whatever they want to and keep on pretending that they are not in full agreement or with it, and in fact they are participating in it but just hiding. They want everybody to think it's just Israel that is doing it, that it's not the United States, because as we see, we're getting closer and closer to a point where the axis of resistance have to attack the United States directly because the Zionist colony is defeated in the ground of Gaza. It's defeated on the front line here in Lebanon, and it can only survive with this direct hidden involvement up until now of the Western military forces. And as we see from yesterday, things are already moving towards that direction. American troops are going to get under attack, and they are already under attack.
Yeah, what's interesting about this, before we get into a few other things, I had a guest the other day, and he says, "Oh, I think Hezbollah's defeated. The whole resistance is defeated. They're down." And I just had the discussion with him. But here's what's interesting: is this? It's the Western view of military conflict, right? It is. Anytime something sensational happens, there's the pager attack. Oh, that's in the news 24 hours. There's the killing of Hezbollah leaders, the assassinations. Oh, that's in the news. So they take those, what I will call, whatever you call it, in a war, in a fight, you and I may fight. I get a bloody nose. That don't mean the fight's over. I don't stop fighting because I got a bloody nose. A lot of people get a bloody nose and win the fight. Bloody nose, taking a punch. I've done a lot of training in self-defense. One of the things you got to learn is how to take a punch. You can't take a punch. You can't fight. You know what I mean? Soon as somebody hits you or you get a broken wrist and somebody's trying to kill you, you can't say, let's stop until I heal my wrist. You have to keep fighting, right? And what is not being grasped by a lot of the imperialists is, the Zionist is, the Muslim community can take a punch. The Muslims say, okay, so you got to punch in, great, I got a broken finger, I got a broken wrist, whatever. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop fighting. It may make me even angrier. Let's not judge who won the fight until the end, when we see who's laying on the ground and who's walking away. And so now they're assuming because they got a good punch in, that's why if you learn self-defense, you get a good punch in and you stun the guy. You keep hitting. You keep punching until he stops, because one punch doesn't end a fight. You got to punch. You know what I mean? Anyway, your thoughts on that, Laith?
Yeah, I mean, look, people may have lost sight that this is an asymmetrical war between a colonized people, the Palestinians, and a few groups that have been under attack for decades, like Hezbollah and Ansarullah, and Iran that has been under sanctions and attack for decades also, versus the strongest, most advanced, richest empire the history has known. Okay, and why some people have lost track of that and sight of that is because the axis of resistance members have been showing us advanced technical, scientific achievements that we have never been used to, that a asymmetrical resistance group has access to, because of this new world that we live in. But we need to not let that make us forget the reality. The reality is the axis of resistance is fighting a much stronger enemy. I mean, look, Russia up until now is being held into a standstill by Ukraine with non-direct involvement of NATO and the West. But on the other hand, just so we can see the achievements of the axis of resistance, on the other hand, the much weaker axis of resistance and its members that are in a concentration camp like in Gaza have held the whole NATO arm empire directly at bay for a year. So you see, it is expected that there will be assassinations of public figures like Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and that the Israelis can achieve that. This is a man that was involved in the day-to-day politics of Lebanon. Heads of all the different parties would come and visit him on a weekly basis to negotiate parliamentary issues and what have you. Dignitaries from around the world, negotiators, and so forth. So is it such a great achievement to be able to assassinate Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who refused to leave Beirut and the southern suburb because he wants to stay with his people? It is not. But we have to now, once we put it in this context, understand that this is a long decolonization war, asymmetrical warfare against the biggest empire, and there will be much more victims in this path, and it's going to be at least as costly as the liberation of Algeria or Vietnam. So people should buckle up for a minimum of a 3-year war that anything and everything is possible in. And millions of people in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and the whole region, and tens of thousands of Western soldiers will die in this battle. So that's the wider context that, anyone that is a couch analyst, military analyst, sitting far away, who has never been involved in a decolonization struggle, would get demoralized and think that the Zionists or the West are winning with the unfortunate assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah.
Here is a perfect example. People remember the infamous, the Kursk offensive, right? Which was recently, right? We also know that in Ukraine, a year or so ago, they had this so-called big offensive, the infamous counteroffensive, right? And at the time, what did they say? Oh, Russia's back on its heels. Russia's in deep trouble now. You know what I mean? That's it for now. That's all over. It's game over for them. They're going to lose. Now they're going to have to negotiate, blah, blah, blah. They got embarrassed and they got a bloody nose and they had to give up some territory that they had taken. Yes, they did. But now they've turned the tables and everybody kind of sees the direction that this thing is going, right? Again, that offensive and the so-called counteroffensive made headlines and all the Americans looked at it and it was a big deal and it was headlines. Over the course of the Vietnam War, a decade. If you remember, what did the soldiers do? They go and they kill 10 people and they write down 100, and then it would go in the newspaper, 100 Vietnamese. You know what I mean? So over the course of a fight, people are going to take a punch. I'm a big believer in this when I look at a war, a fight. The guy can take the punches, the guy that's going to win the most fights. You know what I mean? There are a lot of people. Some big guy grabs me and he goes to reach out and I get my hands on that little finger, pow, and I snap that finger sideways. I don't care how big and strong you are. You grab me, you got your hands, and I get that finger, snap, and I snap that finger. There's a lot of people that will look at their hand, and when they see that finger turn sideways, broken, twisted in the wrong place, they'll literally go into shock. The big, strong 250-pound guy looks and he goes into shock because his finger's hanging off. You know what I'm saying? So I don't care how big and strong you are, you have weak points. And in the end, the person who can take the punch has the best chance of winning the fight. We're seeing it. We see it in Vietnam. I got a book right here. I would admonish people, commend people to buy. People's War, People's Army, the Viet Cong Insurrection Manual for Underdeveloped Countries. It's a great read. If you read this book, you understand that the big, powerful countries have some advantages, but the time is always on the side. And having a just cause, this book talks about that. You got a just cause. You got time on your side, because if you have a just cause, you're willing to take a punch. But losing is not an option because it's your land and you're not going anywhere. Anyway, let's talk about something else I think that we need to know. Speaking of which, I understand that the ConocoPhillips, of all things, that should tell you something. The U.S. in Syria has their base in the ConocoPhillips oil field. Start there.
Oh
Um,
yes. So
Go ahead. That's been hit. Iraq, their bases have been hit. The Iraqi resistance is quite angry, and so the U.S. bases are now starting to get a taste of what's coming if they really get deep involved. Anyway,
yes,
your thoughts?
yes. The American bases in northeast Syria, across from Deir ez-Zor city, across from on the other side of the Euphrates River, the Conoco oil and gas facilities that are occupied by the Americans. It's the biggest base that the U.S. has in northeast Syria. Came under two different waves of drones and guided missiles, and specifically their artillery munitions and their officers' quarters and soldiers' quarters were the target of these attacks. There was huge explosions filmed from across the river. People could, feel the explosions that happened, and this led to American attacks on the city of Deir ez-Zor. And then there was a second retaliation by the resistance on the American base across from the Bou Kamal border crossing between Iraq and Syria, again on the other side of the Euphrates. And yesterday, there was an attack, again filmed in Baghdad, of the American base just beside the Baghdad airport in Iraq. And the targets, again, were the munition warehouses and the officers, units where they sleep. So we haven't gotten any admittance from the US that there is any casualties, but just looking at the images that are there, there's no way there's no casualties. And finally, the last American base that came under attack was in Jordan, just outside Amman, the capital, in the Zarqa area. Again, drones and guided missiles hit this base. Has a huge airfield. It's the most important American base inside occupied Jordan. And that there's complete media silence on from all the media in the West. At least, I saw some coverage briefly about the attacks in Syria and Baghdad, but the one in Jordan was total blackout in the West. And that shows you that, how significant this space is as a second line of defense for the Americans and their presence in the area. Because if the Iraq and Syria bases fall, there's the Jordan bases that are the last line of defense for the Zionist colony. And in an all-out war, we should be expecting that Iraqi fighters will be crossing the borders of Jordan to get to Palestine and to take out the Americans' bases that are there. Similarly, there's huge numbers of Afghani, Yemeni, Pakistani, Iraqi fighters that are gathering right now inside Syria, close to the border of the occupied Golan Heights, and in the south of Lebanon. All these fighters are going to be involved in any possible land invasion of either Syria or Lebanon.
I also understand. I've seen conflicting reports. I've read that Ansar Allah said that they hit some U.S. destroyers with missiles, a complex attack with missiles. Then I read the U.S. said no, they weren't hit. Then I read another article that said Joe Biden said he's going to respond for the ships that got hit. And I thought, well, if they weren't hit, then how can you respond for the ships that weren't hit when you just told us they weren't hit? Sounds to me like something, and it also sounds to me like they're hiding casualties, because if ships got hit with missiles, somebody got hurt, something happened. Anyway.
Oh yes. And the Yemenis have been telling us for a year now that they have been landing punches on American and Western Navy vessels in the area, including one of the aircraft carriers that the United States rushed out of the theater of action and claimed that it had just to do some maintenance, when we know probably it was hit. So the Yemenis have been hitting the American Navy for a year now. We heard the admittance of those Navy officers on those ships saying that they've never seen any fighting like this in their whole life and their careers, that this is something that the American Navy hadn't had to deal with since World War II, because they never got under direct attack since then. So we're in a different reality, and I think that Yemen has also been firing ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, and long-range drones on the Zionist colony over the last 24 hours. They hit Tel Aviv 4 times. They also hit the Ben Gurion airport, the major civilian airport in the Zionist colony, at the same time as Netanyahu was landing with his plane, coming back from announcing his genocidal war on Lebanon and the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah on the pulpit of the United Nations. So that is very advanced coordination when you are able to fire a hypersonic missile that hits the tarmac as the plane was landing. So, and the Ben Gurion airport was closed for 36 hours after that. The Israelis were diverting all their civilian flights to the south of occupied Palestine. And this is going to become a daily occurrence that Yemen hits Tel Aviv. And that in itself is kind of paralyzing the heart of the Zionist colony. The area between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv is like where the majority of the population lives. Yesterday, 2 million of them had to rush 3 times during the day to bunkers. So the whole society is paralyzed, and it's going to become a daily occurrence, and it's going to increase in its frequency. This is coupled with Hezbollah's firing ballistic missiles on the Mossad headquarters, and today, hitting also the Unit 8200, Amman, which is the military intelligence service headquarters. So add all of that. There's going to be, 8, 10, 12 times a day that these Israelis are going to have to rush to bunkers, and their major bases in the heart of the Zionist colony are going to come to under attack constantly. And finally, and I'm going to end it here with this answer. I'm sorry I rambled there for a little bit.
No, keep going.
Ansarullah Yemen promised that in retaliation for the attacks on Hodeidah and the other ports 2 days ago that the Zionists did, that they will be hitting Ashdod, Tel Aviv, and Haifa ports, and they sent a public announcement to all the Zionist colonists to move away from the ports. There's going to be a huge explosion. So this is coming. If Israel wants to blockade Lebanon, it's hitting all the border crossings to Syria to, make it a concentration camp like Gaza. Well, the Zionists will also be blockaded and not be able to run away from the violence that's going to be raining on their heads.
Well, and to me, what I see, there are different kind of fighting styles, right? And what I see is the Israelis, to me, it's almost like the Hollywood thing. They want the big splash, whether it's the pagers, right? Oh, that's a big victory. Attacking Hezbollah leadership. They want the big splashes. And while they get all of the headlines, the resistance forces seem to just constantly put weight on them. You know what I mean? They're not going for a big splash, but they're going to constantly put weight. They're going to lean against you. They're going to make the people run back and forth to bunkers. They're going to hurt your infrastructure. They're going to go after an airport today, go after another critical infrastructure. You know what I mean? Rather than say, okay, we can't do the big punch at any given time and get the headlines, but that ain't the plan anyway. It is keep hitting, day after day, night after night, punch after punch. And that, as we've seen in Ukraine, in a war of attrition, the person that keeps punching. That's why I keep saying, to me, when I see what's happening in Ukraine and the inevitability of a war of attrition, causing U.S. imperialism to fall, and they're like coming to grips with the reality in Ukraine, they have no choice. This, to me, also, it's a war of attrition. Who can last the longest? Who can punch the hardest at one time? but who
Yes,
can last the longest and keep punching, who can stand up under the long-term weight. U.S. imperialism cannot politically do that. Israel cannot politically or physically do that. They're just too small in a region that, you know what I mean? At any rate, go ahead.
yes, yes, definitely. The Israelis have been concentrating on creating these propaganda huge, I'm sorry, some explosion happened, a huge propaganda events that are directed towards their core, base, because they've lost the rest of the world, the majority of citizens in the West, the majority of humanity is against them. They and now we could see there before this assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and this pager terrorism attack, cyber terrorism attack, they were demoralized. Their own troops were beginning to be demoralized. Their own fascists around the world that support them, propagandists, were getting demoralized. So suddenly they created these events that are specifically targeted to them. And you saw how the reaction of this filthy base of the Zionists was. Anybody that they didn't like, they started tweeting at or posting at, oh, do you have a pager? Where's your pager? Paging, blah, 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 blah. So they were, using, this shows you who it was directed for as a propaganda event, and that it was actually effective, maybe momentarily, to refill the heads of these Zionists with their supremacist ideas. Their supremacy was being questioned. And now suddenly they're like, we are the most advanced nation on earth. We are the smartest. We are the most best in this, best in that. We are the chosen people. Okay, it got reinvigorated for a moment. But yesterday, the Israelis were trying this propaganda, claiming that they're going to invade Lebanon, and the Western media were all saying, hey, the invasion began. And just a little expeditionary force attempted to cross around the Khayam area overlooking the Hula Valley in North Palestine, and Hezbollah decimated them, destroyed 3 of their tanks, and lit their infantry on fire. And lo and behold, it all fizzled, this invasion, and they withdrew. So up until now, we can see clearly that the fight on the ground is not the same as the propaganda war that we see playing out in the Western media.
I just read something that says Russia said the Russian foreign ministry condemns the attack on Lebanon, calls on Israel authorities to immediately cease hostilities. Russian they expressed solidarity with Lebanon, right? I also want to bring that into account the Netanyahu's speech in UN. Everybody walked out. The whole global South, they just got out. They just walked out. They were just disgusted by the very sight of him walking in there. And so now you have the world looking at the U.S. They're being exposed. I keep bringing this up. They have to lie to their own people. They have to say, no, we're not in favor of what we're doing. Here's some more bombs, but we're not in favor of that. The world is condemning them, their own people. Zionists are being isolated worldwide, and even in their own countries, they have to suppress the voices of their citizens who are disgusted with this thing.
Oh yes, that the UN speech, Netanyahu had to bring with him a choir, actually, a paid clapping choir. They admitted this. They had to fill the top of the UN so he can have some people that support him, because everybody walked out. Yesterday the Israelis conducted 3 different air raids on Damascus, and the day before in Syria, they attempted, as we are being told, to assassinate the brother of President Bashar al-Assad, Maher al-Assad, who's in charge of the head of the Republican Guard. And those events last night of attacks on Damascus, coordinated at the same time as the attacks on South Lebanon, the supposed failed invasion, triggered President Putin of Russia to call an emergency National Security Council meeting at 2 o'clock in the morning and to rush to the Kremlin, right? Because if the Zionists are so high on their self-confidence that they can kill anyone anywhere, they can kill Haniya in Tehran, they can kill Nasrallah in Beirut, they can assassinate then President Assad, and this is one of the people that the Americans want to get anyways. If they can also assassinate the president of Iran, which they did, in my opinion, President Raisi was assassinated, they can probably also assassinate the Ayatollah of Iran, and that the West will actually clap for them. So these now are lines that have been crossed, that Russia itself, having had these alliances with Syria and Iran, need to weigh their options. If they have signed a strategic security pact with Syria and Iran, and these allies get attacked in such ways where the presidents or the supreme leaders are assassinated, where does Russia stand? So I think we will start seeing more drastic moves by Russia as the possibility of war breaking out may include Syrian territory where Russian troops are on the ground. So they will have to do something. And I finally think that Russia may, in the next few hours or days, decide that it will impose a no-fly zone over Palestine and Lebanon. That's the only way that we can stop the genocides right now and stop us from rolling into a full-out world war.
Yeah, I'm bringing that up, and they have to think about this. I'm sure if I searched assassinate the president of China, assassinate Maduro, which they've tried. Now think about this. In the last few weeks, on numerous occasions, they've tried to assassinate the president of Venezuela. Why? So they could steal his oil. To kill him, so they could take his oil. Same reason they want to kill the president of Syria, Iran. The same reason they want to kill all of them. What I think we see now is something that was inevitable. What the war in Ukraine, and it's interesting because you've been saying for literally years that a military confrontation in the Middle East, West Asia, Persia, was inevitable because the U.S. wants their oil. The U.S. wants to dominate them, and the Muslim civilization is not going to have it. And so this was inevitable. But it seems to me that the rest of the world is also looking at it saying, at some point, it's fairly obvious that these people are total fascists, that this is, the U.S. empire is the Fourth Reich or the Reich 3.1, and that the world has to act, whether it's Russia saying we're going to know a no-fly zone, whether it's Russia saying here's S-400s or here's some more things. I'll put it like this. I don't think it's an accident because the Ansar Allah shot down another one of these Reaper drones here recently that just about weekly they're shooting these things down. I don't think it's an accident that I think I'll just put it like this. I think some powerful forces in the world are really starting to funnel arms into resistance forces. Anyway, your thoughts on that?
I just had that thought when you're talking about the Nazis and the Fourth Reich, that Hitler is probably punching himself in the face down in hell right now, looking up, saying, God damn, if I only accepted the Zionists as the chosen people and the Aryans to be the second, master race after them, they would have let me rule all the West. And that's what we see right now. Nazis ruling all the West. They're allowed, as long as they all admit that above and beyond, on top of the Aryan race, there's a chosen people. They're allowed to. Once they accept that, they're allowed to genocide everybody else. So, yes.
If he'd have said, look, I tell you what I'll do. I'll share the oil with you. And we'll just say that the Zionists are rulers. You know what I mean? At this point, then or the Zionists can have occupy Palestine, and then we'll split the oil. Oh, they'd have been perfectly happy with it, at this point. What else did we want to touch on? I wanted to add this. Let me add this. It's interesting that we talk about this assassinations. They've been trying to shoot Trump. I mean, people have different perspectives on it, whether or not they really tried to shoot him, whether or not they were sending a message to him that, hey, you better keep your mouth shut and do what you're told. But in light of what we see here, calls for the attempt assassination of Maduro, calls for the assassination of Putin, literal, anybody can look it up, assassination of leaders in Hezbollah, calls literally saying, oh, we should do that now to Assad, which they're trying to his family, literally saying, oh, let's do the same thing to Iran. It's gone from we'll go around the world and start wars to we'll just go around the world and kill all the leaders we want, including here. I am still not convinced, I'll be frank, that Trump's going to make it alive. I'm still not convinced that Trump gets to November 2nd alive.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, and I think that maybe there will be no elections. Look at what's going to happen in the next few weeks, maximum. If there's a full-out war and the U.S. is involved in it, it is the best excuse for the Democrats to call for what do you call it, military curfews, and once there's riots
martial
in the
law,
streets,
that's what they call it, martial law.
Exactly. Sorry, I forgot the words, martial law. And so because we already had millions of people out in the streets for the genocide in Gaza against it. Now imagine if the genocide includes much bigger swaths of the Arabic and Muslim world, how many more people will be out in the streets, how more agitated they are, and how much more confrontational they will be or radical in their activities against the positions of their governments, not only in the US and the West. The Democrats may take advantage of that moment, call for martial law, delay the elections. And I said this a year ago. Remember this? We talked about this, and I said this is the projection in my head.
Well, you got to add something. In Gaza. You got to add something. I don't interrupt. You got to add something. Two things. Number one, the war spreads. Add two other things. And what's going to happen to the price of fuel? So you have an economic catastrophe. Number two, we've got a longshoreman strike starting today, I think, which is going to be devastating to the economy. So you have a strike that's devastating to your economy. You have the price of fuel goes through the roof, which now you have an economic meltdown, which is going to put people in the streets going absolutely berserk. And let's just say an unfortunate occurrence happens to Trump, so that you don't have, think about that. If something happens to Trump, that also gives them the excuse where they say, well, they don't have a presidential candidate. We got people in the streets. We got the catastrophe. We're just going to postpone it till spring this time and let the Republicans get somebody back together, which of course will be like some Zionist, more Zionist than Trump, whatever the case may be. So a combination of economic disaster and, unfortunate circumstances occurring around the personage of Donald Trump. No election. I would never thought I would see the day. I was always like, the conspiracy theorists are always crazy saying there's going to be a no election. Yeah.
Yep. And you look, they already, the Democrats gave us the precedent. Number one, with January 6th and deployment of National Guard and so on. And then, of course, what we saw with the Palestine demonstrators, deployments of National Guard on campuses. So the precedent is there right now that the state can deploy military in mass scale on the street to stop the will of the people. So here we have that already built up to it. You were 100% right. If there is a full-out war, there will be no oil or gas coming out of the Gulf, which will push all the oil prices to $600, $700 a barrel. and all the economies in the West will crash. Add to it, not only in the US, there's multiple unions across Europe right now that are calling for, including in France right now, they're calling for a general strike on the issue of the attacks on Lebanon. So we're going to see all this upheaval in the streets of the West, and the empire is too weak right now. It has a vegetable for a president, and so they will need to suppress the population. The omens are there, and I personally could see them a year before, because of how much the West has now hedged all its existence and its identity and its worldview on Zionism and this Zionist colony. They have right now, because they tied their fate openly with the fate of the Zionist colony, they are going to manifest their own end with the end of the colony. If they didn't hedge their whole civilization identity and prowess and whatever on the Zionist colony, the loss of the Zionist colony wouldn't have led to what we see today as a accelerated collapse of American hegemony.
I got a couple of articles I'm going to hit you with and get your thoughts and response. NATO member calls for use of force against Israel. The UN should approve the use of armed force to stop Israel's war in Gaza, Turkish President Erdogan said. Okay, now, certainly, we understand Erdogan and who he is, right? But I think you have to look at that as reflecting the internal pressure that's being put by the people of Turkey. I believe that based on what I've seen, if there is an all-out war, that the bases in Turkey, that the bases that are in U.S. kind of allied countries in the Middle Eastern area will all be attacked, that there won't be any place. But for Erdogan being what he is, we know who Erdogan is, right? He's going to play all sides against each other. But I think you cannot discount the kind of pressure that he must be under, and even maybe the fear that he has that, if there's an all-out war, my people might rise up against me. My military may rise up against me and say either we get involved.
Oh, yes. There's the pressure on the street. There's also the pressure of seeing presidents and leaders being openly assassinated with pride and glee by the West. I mean, they tried to do a coup against Erdogan. Why wouldn't they kill him? Right? Yeah. So, and he's a very public person moving around. He's not hiding in a bunker even. It's not like, and I'm sure a lot of leaders in this world that have opened their mouth with even mild criticism of the policies of Washington and the Zionist colony are right now watching their back, constantly worried that something may happen to them, and that it can come from any side, from electronics, from the air, from the ground, from the sea. Who knows how it's going to happen that you're going to be killed? Maybe you're going to be just poisoned, maybe plutonium, maybe a disease, a heart attack. Anything could happen. Your pacer on your heart, they blow it up. This is how we're getting to these points. So Turkey is at the edge. And if a war breaks out that includes Syria and the bases in Cyprus, that the British bases and that are occupying the south part of Cyprus are also targeted. There's the North Turkish part of Cyprus. What will those Cypriot Turks do? Will they cross the border just without even Turkey prompting them? You see, like things could roll out in many directions that cannot be calculated. What is going to be the, I think, defining marker of the stage that we are now have entered full force is that nothing is predictable, and nothing is should be unexpected, and nothing is a limit, a red line, or a ceiling. There's none of that. We're in a full out war, the kinds that we haven't seen since World War II, I believe.
Yeah. Here's something. Another one. Very important. From TASS. West set to stage chemical weapons use by Syria and Russia in Arab Republic. According to the statement, the leadership of the United States and Britain, being aware of their failed course towards inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia in the Ukraine conflict, pays special attention to undermining Russia's prestige in the global South states. And they say, intelligence services of some NATO countries in Ukraine are set to stage chemical weapons use by the Syrian army, and the Russian military contingent in Syria to discredit Damascus and Moscow in the UN, Russia's foreign service said in a statement, right? Bottom line, let's just say this, wouldn't be the first time. You know what I mean? They've done it on repeated instances in the past. And again, I think that could that be part of what's going on with Russia? Could that be part of the emergency meeting? I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Americans just need another excuse to enter this battle on the side of the Zionists openly. And that would be like, oh, Syria used chemical weapons, we're going to bombard them, or we're going to invade from the occupied parts. It is a very, very dangerous situation in Syria for the Syrian government because it's, number one, the main link that keeps all the axis of resistance together geographically. And it's currently has 3 parts of it from 3 different enemy forces occupying in the Golan Heights, in the Tanaf area, the Americans, and the Turks in the northwest. As a pincer, they're, to drive from the Golan Heights to Damascus is like 25 minutes drive. To drive from the American Tanaf occupation base on the border with Iraq is just a few hours. So Damascus could be attacked and is a softer target than even Lebanon, right? And so Russia is now at a moment that it needs to a clarity in its position. It needs to take decisions that at least deter the possibility that the West attacks Syria and breaks it from the axis of resistance chain link. So, at the same time, if that happens, if Syria falls, Russia loses its only naval and air base anywhere in the region or outside Russia itself.
Yes, and I think that tells me something else too, that the importance of the Syrian corridor, I'll use that term, tells me something, that in the event of an all-out war for the resistance, I mean, I'll just be frank about this, from a strategic perspective, if an all-out war happened, strategically, they'd have to eliminate the American bases first. I mean, if an all-out war began, sadly, do I want to see any American military or any other people die? Certainly not. I want them to get a peaceful resolution to this and every other conflict. But based on our discussion, if in fact an all-out war started due to the importance of the Syrian corridor, the resistance would have to flatten and completely eliminate the American bases in Syria on the first day. They'd have to completely eliminate, they'd have to put everything they got on them and turn them to rubble and basically kill everybody there on the first day, because they couldn't allow the U.S. to dominate that corridor utilizing the bases. Strategically speaking, what do you think?
Yes, and I think right now we're already seeing the beginnings of this. And this has to be also coupled with the destruction of the airfields that the Israelis and the West are using. And we again began seeing that in Palestine. You know, the Hezbollah has destroyed all the major airfields in the north of occupied Palestine. The Zionists are having to use the airfields in the center and the south of occupied Palestine, and or the Cyprus and Jordanian and Qatari airfields to actually attack Lebanon right now. And so we will see, on the one hand, attacks on all the airfields that the West could be using. On the other, there will be attacks on American bases that can cut the land supply routes. And finally, attacks on American and Western naval units, especially aircraft carriers and or amphibious landing units and or helicopter, carriers and so forth. So this is where things, anyone that has any knowledge militarily will understand this.
Yeah, I think yeah, there's certain targets that would have to be eliminated immediately. And I think the targets, from a strategic perspective, the bases in Iraq, the bases in Syria are sitting ducks. And if an all-out war starts, there'll be nothing left there but a pile of smoke and rubble, sadly. And then the U.S. will be crippled. I would also suspect that the bases in Bahrain, et cetera, I actually do remember seeing some things, a missile being fired from a resistance in the Bahrain area, or some kind of Bahraini resistance, which tells me there's local. I put it like this. I think there are areas near those bases, probably in Turkey, probably in Bahrain, in areas that the U.S. would never suspect. There are resistance forces there with mortars, with missiles, etc., ready for local attacks. The U.S. would be looking for something coming, way hypersonic missiles from here and there. I suspect that there are resistance forces in the area that are armed to the teeth that would launch local, maybe even attacks of local fighters that would attack these bases with, with forces. That there's probably a lot of unfortunate surprises that the U.S. would get in the event that this thing kicked up.
You're 100% right. And September 7th last year showed us how a small group of fighters on a very short distance can take over 12 Israeli bases and kill and capture all their generals and officers and defeat the might of the Zionist colony within hours. So you could imagine, the same tactics being used by resistance axis groups that are embedded around these bases, that are watching all the movement, that have these short-range missiles and drones and or infiltration crews that could attack suddenly these spaces. It is coming. And it seems like the only way that the whole West will stop the genocide and this war is that if we see their soldiers going back in coffins. And I doubt even that will stop them. I think we're going all the way. This is a war that's going to take at least 3 years, if not more. And we may even find ourselves in a world war, before it even ends as a regional war.
There we go. I think you're right. There's something else I'm going to put up, and I'm going to get your thoughts on that. It's not related to the region, but it is. So there were reports that the Chancellor of Germany, Scholz, hopes to hold conversations with Putin in weeks. Now, what's interesting is that is in light of the fact that we've been hearing for these many years, you can't talk with Putin, he's evil, blah, blah, blah. The heat inside Germany, you know what I mean? The fury, you can see what's going on in Germany. The people are getting pissed. There are all kinds of elections going on that are not looking good for the so-called traffic light coalition that's running. Now there's basically the Russians are saying, if you piss us off too bad, we'll turn all of you guys into, atomic dust. It seems to me that there's, as they say, the fear of God is starting to be present in some of these European leaders, even a lily-livered joker like Scholz is starting to get some concern. And I believe the fear of imperialists, the fear of the ruling elite is always internal uprising. First and foremost, they don't look out for their people. They piss their people off. They make them suffer, and they get their damn heads cut off. And I think there's a fear in the ruling elite. And I think that is, I'll put it like this. I don't think Schultz does that without the approval of some of the other leaders in the region, that he just does it and the other leaders are calling saying don't do it. I think he represents people who are getting afraid of the dramatic overreach of U.S. imperialism and the plight that they're being facing as a result.
You're right there again. The winter is coming, okay? And already the main supply routes of Russia to Europe are decimated by the terrorist attacks that the US conducted on those pipelines. The only replacements that are logical have been from the Gulf, and that's what's been feeding the heating and the kitchens of Europe, along with Algerian and looted Libyan oil and gas. But you could imagine if the supply route from the Gulf ends to Europe in a regional war. Winter is right across the corner, right around the corner, and people are going to be freezing. The same thing in Canada and the northeast of the U.S. This is not a joke. Once we're in winter, so I think the European leaders that could see the how, on the one hand, their feeding of Zionism is leading to the rise of the extreme right, Nazis, neo-Nazis that are threatening even the leadership of Schultz. They won more votes in some of the provinces. Similarly, in Austria, the neo-Nazis. What does this mean? That means that they've used this supremacist pump up in the population for pro-Zionism as to the last possible outcome, and now they're scared because it's also starting, coupled at the same time with a clear economic collapse that is happening, and stresses on the society that are beyond repair. And so you combine all those three. If there's a breakout of full-out war in the region, those who are leading these countries will be looking behind their back, that even their own allies may be involved in assassinating them or taking them out. And that's a reality that all of them in the West, the elite, are probably right now calling Washington, D.C., saying, hey, man, please, you're putting me in a dangerous situation with my own people. I can't even do what you want me at some point if you continue in this path. Let us, find something. And I don't think that the empire as a whole has a leadership that can exit on a ramp off this highway that's ending with a cliff.
And I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, at first I was, what's going on with Trump? I really think they're trying to kill him. I really do. And I think the more Trump says we got to get out of Ukraine, for the U.S. empire right now, the wars that they've gotten themselves in, they can't get out of any of them. To lose one of them means to lose all of them. Here's what I mean. They're losing hegemony over the world. If they ever had it, that's a whole nother discussion, right? So their thing is, we got to hold on to the Middle East. That's where the oil is. If we want to rule the world, we got to control the lifeblood of industry, which is oil, right? Now we've got to weaken Russia so we can go after China. But if they've gone after Russia, but if that fails and they don't weaken Russia, the whole plot falls apart. If they don't control the Middle East oil, the whole plot falls apart. Every one of these things that they're caught up in, if any of them falls, the whole thing, they put themselves in a position now. If Trump comes in and says, we don't want to do this anymore, which is possible, the whole neocon plan falls apart, because you had to weaken Russia. So you can go after China, because you can't possibly fight Russia and China at the same time, because that's a sure loss. So now they put themselves in a position where they've got a bunch of wars that they're stuck in. And if you continue to fight both of these conflicts that you're so-called proxy conflicts right now, they're increasing the intensity. So you're getting dragged further and further in. Meanwhile, you got strikes at home. You got people at home saying, I'm hurt. They've isolated themselves in an unthinkable position of desperation here, Laith.
Yeah, and I think this, what the U.S. is doing in both West Asia and in Ukraine is probably increasing the possibility that China will do a surprise attack on Taiwan, because it can't wait really for the U.S. to build up there. It has to take advantage of the U.S. being distracted in Ukraine and West Asia, so it can end this before this sore, explodes. This inflamed sore, that's the Taiwan. So this is the world that we live in. If the U.S. can assassinate all these leaders, why can't China assassinate the head of Taiwan? If the Israelis can invade any and every country beside them, why can't China liberate Taiwan by force?
Why can't Russia take out Zelensky?
Exactly.
If they choose. Look, here's the reality. They've said if you launch long-term strikes into Russia, there would be a response, a devastating response. Well, one of them could be, well, you know what? You took out somebody, Zelensky and his whole crew, his whole cabinet. You know they know where they are 24 hours a day.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Okay,
yes.
two can play at that game. He's a goner. Anyone, let's face it, they could flatten 10 Downing Street. They could say, you guys do it. We told you there would be a devastating response. So anyway, your thoughts?
Yes, it's the same thing with these cyber terrorist attacks on pagers and walkie-talkies. I mean, the goddamn Zionist analysts were claiming, well, this is Hezbollah members, they're legitimate target, and it's targeted and so forth. The vast majority, of course, of those victims were not Hezbollah fighters. They were medical workers and what have you that use pagers and walkie-talkies. And even those Hezbollah fighters that got, martyred and or injured, majority of them were during their civilian life in pharmacies, in hospitals, in shopping markets. So if it's justified to attack Hezbollah officers and fighters when they are out of their fatigue, not on the front line, but within their day-to-day civilian life, then it's justified to kill Israeli soldiers when they're not in their fatigue, meaning every 16-year-old to 45-year-old Israeli is a reservist in the military. Therefore, they are all legitimate targets to be blown up in pizzerias in Tel Aviv. You see? So what the Zionists are providing as an example of what is legitimate warfare is everybody can do whatever they want to. And nobody should be crying if there was actual explosions in pizzerias in Tel Aviv, because we had those explosions of the pagers and the walkie-talkies. And similarly, nobody should be crying if we see Netanyahu or Zelensky or the Prime Minister of Taiwan just wiped out in a flash.
Yeah. I certainly agree with that, and I think that now we're in a situation where the U.S. imperialism is wounded. It's interesting to watch every time some flash happens, the pagers or whatever. It's in the news for a week, and it's a big deal. I do think these things will echo for many, many years. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's like, "Oh, I was going to thinking about an electric vehicle." He goes, "But hell, if they can blow the pagers up, they can take control of my electric vehicle. Those things are online. They can blow up. I'm sitting on a giant battery, right?" You've got people now who are like, "Man, I wonder can I go?" I've had people ask me, "How do you get a Huawei phone?" You know, they're like, yeah, you know, a lot of tech stuff. How do you get a Huawei phone? I understand you can get them and get them jailbroke and put them on all that. You've got, I was reading articles that said these, some of the Chinese companies that make pagers and phones are working nonstop, shift after shift after shift, because all of these countries are calling saying, we only want this stuff if it's made in China. We want to send our people there. We want to make sure it's shipped. So not for years, from now on, who would trust electronics from the West? In fact, if I was China, I'd be advertising, buy TVs from us because they won't blow you up. You know what I mean? I mean, at this point, who wants anything from I live in the West and I'm looking around like my other computer started acting funny. I'm like, oh, geez, I wonder, you know what I mean? Maybe I should put it in the other room. It's going to blow me to smithereens. The echoes economically of these things will last eternally.
Oh yes, oh yes. And you know, for our viewers that can't get Huawei phones, according to Snowden, you can get Google Pixel 8 or over, and before you hook it up to anything, you delete the OS system, and you download the Graphene OS, and you run it on the Graphene instead of the Android. As well as you have Briar, which is one of the communication applications that is totally secure, and you'll be safe. This is if you wanna, according to Snowden. So I'm not an expert on this, but according to him, I've been trying to find the. Although I've got a Huawei, so I'm safe. But for my next phone, I was trying to find a Google Pixel phone, but it's not available in the region here.
Yes. Well, once again, everybody, don't forget another great conversation with Laith. We pray for him to stay Laith. We pray for him to stay safe, and go to freepalestine.video. Freepalestine.video. Please go there and make sure you donate. If you can afford it, please become a monthly subscriber so you can continue to donate. Share freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms. Make sure that when you post it, that you also put on the post commending people to do the same, to contribute and to become a monthly subscriber. You know, difficult times there. I'm glad we have a great conversation. We can put a smile on Laith's face and a smile on my face, because these conversations, I really believe conversations like this strengthen us. You know, they give us a little bit of strength. They give us a little bit of a positive attitude. They keep the fight up, and with the understanding that, look, here's the reality of life. I could walk out. I've been in a lot of bad car accidents. You don't even want to hear me starting about the car. There's no way. I could write a book you wouldn't believe. When I tell people, I used to be in law enforcement, and people used to say on my police department, the saying about me was this: Garland, if I ever want to get in a car accident, I want to be sitting next to you because you'll be the only one that lives. I mean, 91-year-old man run a red light. I'm doing 65 right into the side of my car. 65-year-old guy with one leg. I'm going through a red light. Hits my car. Literally, my car went up in the air across 2 lanes of traffic, went up on the side. I mean, I flipped cars. People slammed into me, my car upside down. I could go on and on and on. You would not believe the accidents that I've been in. I have no business being here. So my understanding is, based on all of that, it doesn't have to be a bomb. Life ain't promised to me. I could slip walking down the stairs. I could drive out to the local store to get coffee, or walk across the street and somebody could hit me. You know what I mean?
But it wasn't your time.
Exactly.
It wasn't your time. You're only going to go in your time. Doesn't matter.
So we're going to do the best we can. We're going to enjoy life. We're going to continue to do our good work. You're going to go to freepalestine.video, and you're going to donate to Laith Marouf, and you're going to share, do your part. You don't think that just because you're watching this and you're frustrated and you're angry, that the only thing you can do is post in a chat or call into a radio show or go to a anti-war rally. You can be a part of doing the right thing. You can be a part of helping. And one of the things you can do is go to freepalestine.video and you can donate. And even if you don't have a dime, you got to X account, the Facebook, or whatever account you have, you can share. And what happens if you share on your account and 5 people look at that and they donate? That's all money that you donated, because it wouldn't have happened without you. Make sure you get involved. Thanks a lot. Laith Marouf, look forward to talking to you again soon. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. And don't forget, share this on all your social media